Some further reflections on this notion of leadership. I personally think it is a helpful term, but it may not be all that helpful. What it typically conjures up is this idea that there are leaders and followers. Leaders typically, especially in the American and Anglo-Saxon context, seen as somewhat a better type of person. And therefore everybody in some way encouraged to be that type of person. When you enter college, you need to write an essay about your leadership skills, a time when you were leading, etc. And this becomes a selection criteria. And you're rarely asked about a time when you were following. But if you recall from the dancing guy video, first followers actually are very critical. And good followership is actually very critical to make any meaningful difference. And I wanted to just throw out the possibility of throwing out the term of leadership. Because what it does in this context, it allows a little bit to classify people as either leaders or followers, even if we're assuming that leadership could be a role that you can step in and step out of. But given the prior sort of context of leadership, it does have the stigma or the connection with somehow being heroic, with being better than others. And in this context, what I just ask you to think about as being more helpful, we could think about leadership just simply being more human. Who allows themselves to be more human may actually allow people to be more alive, to be more human themselves. And what you can consider this notion, when you consider this notion, you can actually make sense of a number of perspectives on leadership that have nothing to do with the traditional understanding of followership or anything else. And what I experience with students when we're sharing these kind of perspectives and the shift in perspective is that it's quite liberating. That you don't have to be a leader, whatever that may mean. What you can be is a best version of yourself, a better version of yourself, continuously growing to be more human, a better version of yourself. And by doing that, potentially leading by example, potentially allowing people to explore themselves what potential they have. So just as some kind of thoughts for you to consider at this point is to maybe let go of this notion of leadership, even though the session is about it. And think of it as much more deeply as what it means to be the best version of yourself that you can be, the best human being that you can be. Gandhi, for example, you would see as that type of leader that exemplified something that we don't consider typically a leader, but most people will admire him. And so we do with many other people that really don't fit in the typical mold of a business leader, of any type of leader of the traditional sort. Many people consider Jesus a leader. Many people call Buddha a leader. So these kind of figures actually didn't lead in the traditional sense, but they became very human to some degree. And I would just encourage you to stay with that perspective for a bit and reflect on it.